The chlorinated water burned her lungs as Zara Williams surfaced, gasping, her designer dress clinging to her trembling frame. The two HOA security guards who'd shoved her into the Willowbrook Estates pool stood at the edge, their smug grins faltering as they realized their mistake. What they didn't know was that Zara wasn't just any 17-year-old black girl they could intimidate. She was the daughter of the city's most feared civil rights attorney, and she had recorded everything. But as sirens wailed in the distance, and her father's black Mercedes screeched into the parking lot, the guards were about to discover that some actions can't be undone, some words can't be taken back, and some fights change everything forever. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawns of Willowbrook Estates as Zara Williams stepped out of her friend Madison's white BMW. The exclusive gated community sprawled before them, like a monument to suburban perfection, identical colonial houses with their pristine shutters, emerald lawns that looked painted rather than grown, and streets so clean they might have been scrubbed with toothbrushes. "I still can't believe your parents moved here," Madison said, adjusting her rearview mirror. "It's like stepping into a Norman Rockwell painting." If Norman Rockwell had been really into homeowners associations and lawn ordinances, Zara laughed, shouldering her swim bag. "Dad says it's an investment. Mom says it's about me having the best opportunities before senior year." She paused, looking up at the imposing brick entrance gate. "I think they're both trying to convince themselves this is normal." The Willowbrook Estates community pool sat at the heart of the development, a crystalline oasis surrounded by perfectly trimmed hedges and wrought iron fencing. Zara had been coming here for 3 weeks now, ever since her family's move from their comfortable but modest home across town. 3 weeks of cautious smiles from neighbors. 3 weeks of feeling like an exhibit in a museum she'd never asked to visit. "You sure you don't want me to stay?" Madison asked, though she was already checking her phone. "I could cancel dinner with Derek, go." Zara waved her off. "I brought my AP history textbook. I'll read by the pool for an hour, then walk home. It's literally 4 blocks. Madison pulled away with a honk and a wave, leaving Zara standing before the pool's entrance gate. She swiped her resident access card, the plastic rectangle that had cost her father a $500 security deposit and monthly dues that made him. When sand pushed through, the pool area was nearly empty. A few elementary-aged kids splashed in the shallow end while their mothers chatted on lounge chairs, their conversations a low hum of gossip about property values and school board elections. Zara chose a chair in the corner, far enough from the families to study in peace but close enough to the water to feel the occasional cool mist. When the breeze shifted, she'd been reading about the Montgomery bus boycott for 20 minutes when the gate clanged open behind her. "Excuse me." The voice was sharp, authoritative. Zara looked up to see 2 men in matching navy blue uniforms approaching. Security guards, though she'd never seen them before. The older one was tall and wiry, with graying hair and pale eyes that seemed to catalog everything they saw. His name tag read Reynolds. The younger guard was stockier, with a buzz cut, and the kind of aggressive posture that suggested he'd peaked in high school football. His tag said Davidson. "Can I help you?" Zara asked, marking her place in the textbook. Reynolds stepped closer, his shadow falling across her chair. "We're going to need to see some identification." Identification? Zara's eyebrows rose. She looked around the pool area. None of the other families had been asked for ID. "Is there a problem?" "Ma'am, this is a private community pool," Davidson chimed in, his voice carrying the particular brand of officiousness that suggested he'd been waiting all day to use it. "Residents only." Zara reached into her swim bag and pulled out her access card, holding it up so they could see the Willowbrook Estates logo clearly printed on it. "I'm a resident. My family lives at 47 Maple Grove Lane." Reynolds barely glanced at the card. "We're going to need to see a driver's license or state ID. Anyone can get one of those cards." The words hung in the air like smoke. Around the pool, conversations had quieted. Zara could feel eyes on her, some curious, some embarrassed, a few openly hostile. She thought of her father's advice. Stay calm, document everything, never let them see you sweat. "Of course," she said evenly, reaching for her purse. Her driver's license was crisp and new, the address clearly matching what she'd just told them. She handed it to Reynolds, who studied it with theatrical intensity. He said finally. "Zara Williams. Says here, you're 17. That's correct. Minors aren't allowed in the pool area without adult supervision after 4 p.m. Zara felt her chest tighten. She'd been coming here for weeks, always at this time, and had never heard of such a rule. "Could you show me where that's posted? I've read all the pool rules, and I don't remember seeing." "It's a new policy," Davidson interrupted. "Just went into effect today, that's right, today." The lie was so blatant, so casually delivered, that for a moment Zara could only stare. Then she felt something familiar rising in her chest, not anger exactly, but a crystalline clarity that came from recognizing a moment that would define things. She pulled out her phone. "What are you doing?" Reynolds demanded. "Calling my father? He's very interested in HOA policies." She began to dial, but Davidson stepped forward and knocked the phone from her hand. It clattered across the concrete, the screen cracking against the pool's edge. "Hey!" Zara shot to her feet. "You can't." You need to leave now. Reynolds moved closer, close enough that she could smell coffee and cigarettes on his breath. This pool is for residents only. I am a resident. The words came out louder than she'd intended, carrying across the water. Several of the mothers had gathered their children and were heading for the exit, not wanting to get involved. Others had their phones out, though whether to call for help or to record the confrontation, Zara couldn't tell. Are you? Davidson asked, his smile cold. Or are you just another one of those people who thinks they belong everywhere? The words hit like a physical blow. Zara had heard worse, much worse, but there was something about the casual cruelty, the public nature of it, that made her vision blur with rage. I live here, she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. My family owns a home here. We pay the same dues, follow the same rules. Rules are rules, Reynolds said. He reached for her arm. Time to go. Zara jerked away. Don't touch me, then walk. No. The word came out harder than she'd meant it to, but she didn't take it back. Behind her, she could hear the gentle lapping of pool water against the tile, the distant hum of the filtration system. Normal sounds of a normal afternoon that was becoming anything but normal. Davidson moved to her other side, effectively boxing her in. Listen, girl, my name is Zara. I don't care what your name is. You're trespassing, and we're authorized to remove trespassers by any means necessary. The mothers who hadn't fled were now openly recording. Zara could see their phones held high, capturing every word, every gesture. She thought of her parents, her father, who'd worked 18-hour days to afford this house. Her mother, who'd decorated Zara's new room with such hopeful courage, felt something harden inside her chest. Remove me, she asked quietly. How, exactly? Reynolds grabbed her upper arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. Like this. Zara wrenched free, stumbling backward. Her heel caught the edge of a lounge chair, and she went down hard, her textbook flying open, pages fluttering like wounded birds. Clumsy, Davidson observed. Maybe you should be more careful. Zara pushed herself up, her palms scraped from the concrete, her dress torn at the shoulder. Around the pool, phones were recording everything, but no one was moving to help. No one was speaking up. They were all just watching. You assaulted me, she said, loud enough for the cameras to catch. Both of you. I have witnesses. Reynolds laughed. Witnesses to what? You fell down. Accidents happen. Get up, Davidson added. Time to go home. Back where you came from. The top phrase hit like ice water. Back where you came from. As if her home 4 blocks away wasn't real. As if the mortgage payments and property taxes and carefully maintained flower beds didn't count. As if she were still just visiting, just playing pretend at belonging. Zara stood slowly, brushing concrete dust from her dress. Her phone lay near the pool's edge, screen spiderwebbed but still recording. She could see the red light blinking, capturing everything. I'm not leaving, she said. The words surprised even her. This wasn't the plan. The plan was to read her book, swim a few laps, walk home for dinner. The plan was to blend in, to prove her family belonged here through quiet competence and careful behavior. But plans change. What did you say? Reynolds asked. I said I'm not leaving. This is my community pool. I have every right to be here. Davidson stepped forward, his face flushing red. You have the right to do what we tell you to do. Actually, Zara said, her voice gaining strength. I have the right to equal treatment under the law. I have the right to use facilities my family pays for, and I have the right to not be harassed because of my race. Race, Reynolds laughed. This isn't about race, honey. This is about rules. Show me the rule that says minors can't us. The first police car arrived 7 minutes after Zara's call, followed quickly by 2 more. Officer Martinez, a compact woman with graying temples and intelligent eyes, took control of the scene immediately, separating the witnesses and directing her colleagues to secure the area. She approached Zara with a towel someone had provided and an expression of professional concern. You're the one who called this in? Martinez asked. Yes, ma'am, Zara Williams. She accepted the towel gratefully, though it did little to help her. Sodden dress. Those 2 men assaulted me and threw me in the pool. Martinez glanced toward Reynolds and Davidson, who were huddled together near the pool house, their uniforms still dripping. And you are a resident. My family lives at 47 Maple Grove Lane. We moved here 3 weeks ago. I see. Martinez made a note. Can you walk me through what happened? As Zara recounted the events, more police arrived, along with paramedics, who insisted on checking her for injuries, despite her protests. The pool area had transformed into something resembling a crime scene, with yellow tape sectioning off areas and officers interviewing the handful of witnesses who had remained. The whole thing's on video, Zara explained, showing Martinez her cracked phone. I started recording when they knocked my phone down the first time, but it kept recording. Martinez watched the footage with increasing grimness. When it reached the moment where Reynolds and Davidson lifted Zara and threw her into the pool, she stopped the video and looked up. This is clear assault, she said, possibly civil rights violations as well, given the language used. She paused. You said, your father is coming. He should be here. The screech of tires on asphalt announced Marcus Williams' arrival. Zara watched her father's black Mercedes take the turn into the pool parking lot faster than she'd ever seen him drive, followed closely by a white van with Channel 7 News emblazoned on the side. Marcus Williams emerged from his car like a force of nature contained in a perfectly tailored suit. At 52, he commanded attention without effort. 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered with silver threading through his black hair and eyes that could dissect a hostile witness at 20 paces. He'd built his reputation as the attorney who took cases others wouldn't touch, who turned David and Goliath fights into headlines and precedent-setting victories. Right now, he looked like he could eat glass and asked for seconds. Zara, he crossed the distance between them in long strides, gathering her into a fierce hug that smelled like expensive cologne and barely controlled fury. Are you hurt? I'm okay, Daddy, wet and angry, but okay. Marcus held her at arm's length, his lawyer's eyes cataloging every detail, the torn dress, the scraped palms, the way she held herself with rigid control. Then he looked past her toward Reynolds and Davidson, and his expression shifted into something that made several onlookers take an unconscious step back. Those are the men. Yes. Officer Martinez approached cautiously. Mr. Williams, I'm Officer Martinez. Your daughter has been very helpful in explaining the situation. Marcus turned his attention to her, and Zara could see him forcing his professional demeanor back into place. Officer Martinez, what charges are being filed? We're still gathering information, but based on the video evidence and witness statements, we're looking at assault, possible battery, civil rights violations. Good. Marcus pulled out his phone. I'm calling the FBI Civil Rights Division. This is clearly a federal hate crime. Zara said quietly. The news crew is here. Marcus looked toward the Channel 7 van, where a reporter was setting up with her. Cameraman, did you call them? No, but I posted the video online right after it happened. Zara showed him her phone. It's already been shared 200 times. For the first time since arriving, Marcus smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Good girl. The reporter, a polished woman in her 30s named Sarah Chen, approached with her cameraman in tow. Mr. Williams. Sarah Chen, Channel 7 News. Could we have a word about what happened here today? Absolutely. Marcus straightened his tie. But first, I want to make sure my daughter is properly cared for. More cars were arriving, now neighbors drawn by the commotion, additional media, and a sleek black sedan that Zara didn't recognize until 3 men in expensive suits emerged. Marcus's law partners, she realized. The cavalry had arrived. David Reyes, Marcus's lead partner, strode over with the confident air of a man who'd never lost a case he cared about. Marcus, Zara, he nodded to them both. We came as soon as we got your message. Tom's already filing emergency motions, and Patricia is coordinating with the ACE. Dad, Zara said, watching the scene unfold around them. This is getting really big. It should be big, Marcus replied grimly. What happened to you today wasn't just an assault, sweetheart. It was an attempt to make you invisible, to erase your right to exist in a space your family has every legal claim to. That's not something we address quietly. Across the pool area, Reynolds and Davidson were being questioned by Detective Kim, a stern-faced man who'd arrived with the second wave of police. Zara could see the security guard's body language changing as the reality of their situation became clear. Reynolds kept glancing toward the news cameras with growing panic, while Davidson had gone pale and shaky. Mr. Williams, Sarah Chen had finished setting up. We're ready whenever you are. Marcus positioned himself with the pool in the background, Zara beside him. She'd changed into dry clothes from the bag in his car. He'd thought to bring them, along with her favorite sweater, and a bottle of water. My name is Marcus Williams, he began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd addressed juries for 25 years. This afternoon, my 17-year-old daughter was assaulted by 2 security guards at our community pool. She was targeted because she's black, harassed because they decided she didn't belong here, and physically attacked when she refused to be intimidated. The camera captured everything: his controlled anger, Zara's quiet dignity, the pool where the assault had occurred still visible behind them. The Willowbrook Estates HOA hired these men to provide security, Marcus continued. Instead, they provided terrorism. They put their hands on my child. They used racial slurs. They threw her into a swimming pool like she was trash to be discarded. Behind the camera, Detective Kim was placing handcuffs on Reynolds. The sight sent a ripple of murmurs through the growing crowd. But here's what they didn't count on, Marcus said, his voice rising slightly. They didn't count on my daughter being brave enough to stand her ground. They didn't count on witnesses with cameras. And they sure as hell didn't count on the fact that some fights are worth having, no matter the cost. Sarah Chen leaned forward. What do you plan to do now? Everything, Marcus said simply. Criminal charges, civil rights violations, federal hate crime prosecution. We're suing the security company, the HOA, and every individual involved in this travesty. And we're not stopping until this community ends. Every community like I understands that. Black children have the same right to swim in peace as any other children. The interview continued for several more minutes, but Zara found her attention drifting. Around the pool, she could see neighbors she recognized: Mrs. Henderson from 3 houses down, The Johnsons who'd waved politely when they passed on morning walks. The couple with the golden retriever who'd never quite made eye contact. Some looked sympathetic, others appeared uncomfortable, as if her family's presence had suddenly become inconvenient in a way they hadn't anticipated. A few seemed openly hostile, their arms crossed and their faces set in hard lines. Zara, her father's hand on her shoulder, brought her back to the present. The detective wants to speak with you again. Detective Kim was a methodical man who asked the same questions 3 different ways, cross-referencing her answers with the video evidence and witness statements. By the time he finished, the sun was setting, and the pool area had been cleared of everyone except law enforcement and the legal teams. Both suspects are being held pending arraignment, Kim informed. Then the district attorney wants to review the case personally, given the media attention and the nature of the charges. Marcus nodded. When can we expect formal charges to be filed? Tomorrow morning, at the latest. The evidence is overwhelming. As they prepared to leave, Zara noticed a small group of people gathered near the pool entrance. 3 families, all with children, all white. They weren't talking to reporters or police, just standing together and watching. Dad, she said quietly, look. Marcus followed her gaze, and his expression hardened. What is it? The Petersons, the Cohens, the Washingtons? She'd learned their names from the community newsletter, had seen them at the pool dozens of times over the past weeks. They were all here today. They saw everything. Did any of them intervene? No. The word came out flatter than she'd intended. They just watched. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, studying the group. Then he walked over to where they stood. Good evening, he said, his voice perfectly polite. I'm Marcus Williams. That's my daughter, Zara. The families shifted uncomfortably. Bill Peterson, a balding man in his 40s, stepped forward reluctantly. Mr. Williams, we're sorry about what happened. Are you? The question hung in the air. Peterson glanced back at his wife, who was holding their 18 daughter's hand tightly. Of course we are, Mrs. Cohen said quickly. Zara woke to her phone buzzing incessantly with notifications. 50,000 views had become 500,000, then crossed into the millions. #Justice for Zara was trending on Twitter. Her inbox overflowed with messages from strangers, reporters, civil rights organizations, and college recruiters who somehow thought this was an appropriate time to discuss her academic future. By 7 a.m., 3 news vans were parked outside their house. Don't look out the window, her mother, Dr. Patricia Williams, warned as she set a plate of scrambled eggs in front of Zara. Patricia was an emergency room physician who'd seen every kind of human crisis, but the sight of reporters camping on her front lawn had shaken her in a way that 12-hour trauma shifts never did. Too late, Zara said, peering through the blinds. Channel 3, Fox News, and ... is that CNN? Marcus appeared in the kitchen doorway, already dressed in his courtroom armor, a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and a red tie that meant he was preparing for war. CNN, MSNBC, and 3 national newspapers. David's fielding interview requests, but I told him nothing until after the arraignment. The arraignment is this morning, Patricia asked. 10 a.m. Both suspects are being charged with assault, battery, civil rights violations, and federal hate crime charges. Marcus poured coffee into a travel mug. The U.S. Attorney's Office is handling it personally. Zara pushed her eggs around her plate, her appetite gone. The weight of what had happened was settling on her shoulders like a lead blanket. Dad, what if I just want to go to school and pretend this never happened? Both parents stopped what they were doing. Marcus sat down across from her, his lawyer mask slipping to reveal the concerned father underneath. Baby girl, I understand that impulse. But you can't unknow what you know now. You can't unsee what you've seen. Which is what? Exactly. That the world isn't fair. That being right isn't enough. That sometimes doing the right thing means accepting that your life is never going to be simple again. Patricia joined them at the table, her medical training evident in the way she studied Zara's face for signs of trauma. Honey, you don't have to be anyone's symbol. You don't owe the world anything. But, Marcus continued, you've been given something rare, a platform, a moment when people are listening. The question is, what do you want to say? Before Zara could answer, the doorbell rang, then rang again, and again. I'll handle it, Marcus said, but Zara was already standing. No, this is my life now, right? I should probably learn how to live it. She walked to the front door and opened it to find a young black woman in a crisp blazer holding a microphone. Behind her, cameras rolled and reporters shouted questions. Zara Williams, I'm Keisha Thompson from Channel 7. Could you tell us how you're feeling this morning? Tired, Zara said honestly, and angry, but mostly determined. Determined to do what? Zara looked past the reporter to the crowd of neighbors who had gathered on the sidewalk. Some held signs reading, "We stand with Zara and Willowbrook against racism." Others watched with the same uncomfortable expressions she'd seen at the pool, as if her presence had somehow contaminated their peaceful community. To make sure this never happens to anyone else, she said. The impromptu press conference lasted 15 minutes. Zara fielded questions with a composure that surprised even herself, while her parents flanked her like bodyguards. When it ended, Marcus ushered her back inside where David Reyes was waiting with a stack of legal documents and a grim expression. The HOA wants to meet, David announced without preamble. What kind of meeting? Marcus asked. Damage control. They're hemorrhaging. Members' 17 families have already put their houses on the market. Property values are dropping. The security company has fired Reynolds and Davidson and terminated their contract with Willowbrook. Zara felt a hollow satisfaction. Good, it gets better, David continued. 3 other families have come forward with similar stories. Harassment, discriminatory enforcement of rules, verbal abuse. We're talking about a pattern of civil rights violations going back years. Patricia sat down heavily. 3 other families? Why didn't they speak up before? Same reason most people don't, Marcus said grimly. Fear, isolation. The assumption that no one would believe them or care. But they're coming forward now. Your daughter's video gave them permission to tell their stories, David explained. Sometimes it takes one person being brave enough to stand up before others find their voices. The weight of responsibility settled more heavily on Zara's shoulders. She thought about the families who had suffered in silence, who had endured harassment and humiliation rather than risk the kind of public scrutiny she was now facing. What does the HOA want? She asked. David consulted his notes. A private settlement, a public apology, promises of policy changes, and they want it all done quietly, without admitting fault. Marcus's laugh was sharp and humorless. Absolutely. Not that's what I told them. But Zara, they're going to come at you hard now. Private investigators, social media attacks, attempts to discredit you and your family. They have a lot of money and a lot to lose. As if summoned by his words, Zara's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You don't belong here. Leave while you still can. She showed it to her parents, then deleted it. It was the 5th threat she'd received that morning. We're getting you a security detail, Marcus said immediately. Dad? No. I'm not going to live in fear. You're not going to live recklessly either. They were interrupted by a knock at the back door. Patricia went to answer it and returned with Madison, who looked like she'd been crying. Zara, I'm so sorry, Madison said, rushing to hug her. I should have stayed yesterday. If I'd been there, it wouldn't have changed anything, Zara said firmly. This was always going to happen. Maybe not yesterday, maybe not at the pool, but somewhere, somehow. Madison pulled back, her face confused. What do you mean? I mean some people were never going to accept me here, no matter how perfect I was, how quiet I kept, how much I tried to fit in. Zara felt a strange sense of clarity settling over her. At least now I know who they are. But everyone at school is talking about it, Madison said. Half the kids think you're a hero, but the other half, they're saying you overreacted, that you made it about race when it didn't have to be. What do you think? Madison was quiet for a long moment. I think if you were white, those guards would never have asked for your ID in the first place. It was a small acknowledgement, but it felt like a victory. The courthouse was a zoo. Protesters lined the steps, some supporting Zara, others carrying signs that made her stomach turn. All Lives Matter competed with Black Lives Matter. Support Our Police faced off against Justice for Zara. The divide that had always existed in their community was now on full display. Inside, the arraignment was swift and efficient. Reynolds and Davidson, looking diminished in their orange jumpsuits, were formally charged with assault, battery, civil rights violations, and federal hate crimes. Their lawyers' expensive suits, paid for by the security company's insurance, requested bail. Your Honor, the prosecutor argued, these defendants committed a racially motivated assault against a minor in front of multiple witnesses. The video evidence is unambiguous. They pose a flight risk and a danger to the community. Bail is set at $100,000 each. Judge Martinez announced, defendants are ordered to have no contact with the victim or her family and are banned from the Willowbrook Estates community. As they left the courthouse, Marcus pulled Zara aside. There's something you need to know. The security company's insurance policy has a civil rights exclusion. If we win the civil case, Reynolds and Davidson will be personally liable for damages. How much are we talking about? Potentially millions. Pain and suffering? Punitive damages, civil rights violations. This could bankrupt them, Zara thought. About the 2 men who had humiliated her, who had put their hands on her, who had tried to make her disappear. Part of her felt satisfied by the prospect of their financial ruin, but another part felt something uncomfortably close to pity. Dad, what if they apologize? What if they genuinely understand what they did wrong? Marcus studied her face. Do you think they do? Zara remembered the way Reynolds had laughed after throwing her in the pool, the casual cruelty in Davidson's voice when he told her to go back where she came from. No, I don't think they're capable of understanding. Then we proceed. That afternoon, Zara made a decision that surprised everyone. She asked to return to school. Absolutely not, Patricia said immediately. The media attention? The threats. Mom, if I hide now, I'll be hiding forever. Zara stood in their living room, looking out at the protesters who were still gathered on their lawn. Besides, I have homework. It was a weak joke, but it made her parents smile. You don't have to be strong all the time, Marcus said gently. I know, but right now, I need to be normal. just for a few hours. Willowbrook High was a different world when she walked through the doors the next morning. Conversations stopped. As she passed, some students smiled and nodded subtly. Others stared with curiosity or hostility. A few took pictures with their phones until teachers confiscated them. In first period AP History, Mrs. Chunyo, relation to the reporter, had rearranged the seating chart to put Zara next to empty desks, creating a buffer zone that felt both protective and asylum. 3 months later, Zara Williams stood at the podium of the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing room, her voice steady as she addressed a room full of lawmakers, cameras, and civil rights advocates. The girl who had been thrown into a pool for the crime of existing while black had become the face of the Civil Rights Restoration Act of 2025. Senators, she began, my name is Zara Williams, and I'm here to tell you why silence kills. The hearing room was packed beyond capacity. In the gallery she could see her parents, David Reyes, and representatives from a dozen civil rights organizations, but she could also see the opposition lawyers from the security industry, HOA representatives, and others who had spent the past 3 months trying to discredit her story. The months since the pool incident had been a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media appearances, and personal attacks that would have broken someone with less resolve. Reynolds and Davidson had been convicted on all charges and sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. The civil trial had resulted in a $4.2 million judgment against them personally, effectively bankrupting both men. But the real cost had come in the weeks that followed, as Zara's story became a catalyst for change across the country. The day I was assaulted at my community pool, she continued, I learned something that no 17-year-old should have to learn. I learned that being right isn't enough, that following the rules isn't enough, that trying to fit in, trying to be perfect, trying to make yourself small enough to be acceptable, none of it is enough when some people have decided you don't belong. Senator Patricia Ayes, the committee chair, leaned forward. Miss Williams, can you tell the committee about the response in your community after the incident? Zara nodded. Initially, there was support. Neighbors held rallies, signed petitions, demanded justice. But as the media attention continued, as property values dropped, and the community's reputation was damaged, that support began to erode. Thought back to the night 2 months ago when someone had spray-painted "Go Home" across their garage door. The next morning, 17 families had marched to their house with buckets and brushes to clean it off. But by the following week, 3 of those same families had put their houses up for sale. The threats escalated, she continued, not just against me, but against anyone who supported me. Parents who signed petitions found their children excluded from social groups. Businesses that displayed justice for Zara signs saw their contracts canceled by HOA board members. Senator Williams, no relation, despite the shared name, interrupted. Are you suggesting that exercising First Amendment rights resulted in economic retaliation? I'm not suggesting it, Senator. I'm stating it as fact. My father's law firm lost 3 major clients within a month of the incident. The pressure was immense, and the message was clear. Stand with the Williams family and pay the price. In the Gallard, Marcus Williams watched his daughter with a mixture of pride and heartbreak. She had grown up so much in these months, had developed the kind of steely resolve that came from being tested by fire. But she had also lost something: the easy laugh, the assumption that the world was fundamentally fair, the luxury of being a teenager whose biggest worry was college applications. Miss Williams, Senator Hayes continued, the Civil Rights Restoration Act would strengthen federal protections against discrimination in housing, public accommodations, and private associations, like homeowners associations. In your view, would this legislation have prevented what happened to you? Zara considered the question carefully. Not entirely, no. You can't legislate away hatred or fear or the human tendency to see otherness as a threat. But what this legislation would do is make the cost of discrimination clear and immediate. It would give victims faster recourse and impose real penalties on institutions that enable discrimination. But critics argue that this would lead to frivolous lawsuits in government, overreach into private communities. With respect, Senator, what happened to me wasn't frivolous. The pattern of discrimination against minority families in Willowbrook Estates wasn't frivolous. The economic retaliation against people who supported civil rights wasn't frivolous. Zara's voice hardened slightly. When people use the word frivolous to describe civil rights complaints, what they're really saying is that the dignity and safety of minorities is a frivolous concern. The hearing continued for 2 more hours. Zara answered questions about the legal proceedings, the ongoing federal investigation into discrimination in planned communities, and the impact on her family and education. She spoke with the authority of someone who had lived through every aspect of the civil rights system, from the criminal assault to the criminal trial to the ongoing civil litigation. During a break, she stepped outside for air and found herself face to face with someone she hadn't expected to see. Mrs. Peterson from the pool incident, the woman whose family had watched the assault without intervening. Zara, Mrs. Peterson said nervously, I wanted to apologize for not helping that day, for not speaking up. Zara studied the older woman's face. She looked tired, worn down by months of community controversy and personal guilt. "Why now?" Zara asked. "Because my daughter asked me why I didn't help you, and I didn't have a good answer." Mrs. Peterson's voice cracked slightly. "She's 8 years old, and she understood something that I failed to grasp. That standing by while someone is hurt makes you complicit in the hurt." "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That I was scared and selfish, and that I failed a basic test of human decency." Mrs. Peterson met Zara's eyes. "I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed you to know that some of us have learned from what happened. Some of us are trying to be better." Before Zara could respond, her father appeared at her side. "Zara, they're ready to resume." She nodded, then turned back to Mrs. Peterson. "Apologies are just words, unless they're followed by action. If you really want to make amends, use your voice to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." "I will," Mrs. Peterson said. "I promise." The afternoon session focused on the broader implications of Zara's case. Expert witnesses testified about the rise of discrimination in planned communities, the role of private security companies in enforcing segregation, and the legal gaps that allowed civil rights violations to persist. Dr. Angela Davis, not famous activist but a sociology professor who had studied housing discrimination, presented data showing that communities like Willowbrook Estates were becoming increasingly common, wealthy, predominantly white enclaves with private security forces that operated with minimal oversight and maximum discretion. "What we see in the Williams case," Dr. Davis testified, "is a microcosm of a larger problem: the privatization of public space, the delegation of authority to unaccountable security forces, and the creation of legal gray areas where civil rights protections are weakened or absent entirely." The most powerful testimony came from the 3 other families who had experienced discrimination in Willowbrook Estates: the Hernandez family, whose children had been repeatedly questioned about their right to use the playground; the Patel family, who had been subjected to extra scrutiny and harassment during community events; the Jackson family, who had endured years of complaints about their landscaping, their visitors, and their children's noise levels. "I watched Zara Williams get thrown into that pool," Mrs. Jackson testified, her voice shaking with emotion, "and I thought about my own children, about how many times they'd been made to feel unwelcome in their own neighborhood. And I realized that if I didn't speak up now, I'd be complicit in whatever happened to them next." As the hearing concluded, Senator Hayes asked Zara for her final thoughts. "3 months ago, I was a teenager who just wanted to swim in peace," Zara said. "Today, I'm someone who understands that peace without justice isn't really peace at all. It's just the absence of visible conflict." She looked out at the gallery, at the faces watching her, some supportive, some hostile, most simply curious about this young woman who had become an unlikely symbol of resistance. "The Civil Rights Restoration Act won't solve racism. Laws can't change hearts. But what laws can do is make the cost of discrimination clear and immediate. They can ensure that people who commit civil rights violations face real consequences, not just bad publicity." She paused, thinking about the months of threats, legal battles, and personal attacks that had followed her decision to stand up to Reynolds and Davidson. "People ask me if I regret fighting back that day at the pool, if I regret refusing to be quiet about what happened. The answer is no. Not because it's been easy, it hasn't. Not because the system has been fair, it hasn't. But because silence in the face of injustice is complicity, and I refuse to be complicit in my own dehumanization." The hearing ended to thunderous applause from the gallery. As Zara gathered her papers and prepared to leave, she was approached by a young black girl, maybe 12 years old, who had been sitting with her mother in the front row. "Miss Williams," the girl said shyly, "I wanted to thank you. My family is moving to a new neighborhood next month, and my mom says that because of what you did, I won't have to be afraid to use the pool." Zara knelt down to the girl's eye level. "What's your name?" "Maya." "Well, Maya, I want you to remember something. You don't need anyone's permission to exist in public spaces.